You can't stop us! Get out of our way! We run this town. Hachazo! You don't belong here! Get out!
Black Tomb Guard targeted by gang, unaware. He is a former Delta Force commander, follows the gripping tale of Marcus Reed, a quiet black cemetery guard who endures systemic racism, brutal harassment, and the abuse of power in a small southern town. In the beginning, Marcus silently tends the graves, ignoring insults and threats, but the local gang led by Ricky, protected by Sheriff Clay, desecrate tombs and torment him, mistaking his restraint for weakness. Each chapter escalates. Insults turn to violence. The sheriff turns a blind eye, and Marcus is beaten nearly to death, only for his hidden past as a former Delta Force commander to surface when he is cornered. As the gang and sheriff plot his downfall, Marcus dismantles their ambush with controlled precision, revealing his ghostly combat instincts. The sheriff escalates, trying to frame and destroy him, but townsfolk begin to see the truth, rallying to Marcus's side. In a climactic standoff at dawn, Clay and Ricky's corruption is exposed before the entire town, their power shattered under the weight of witnesses and proof. In the epilogue, Marcus remains at the cemetery, lantern in hand, not as a victim but as a sentinel, a silent protector whose flame stands eternal against fear, injustice, and silence. The cemetery stretched wide under a pale moon, the tombstones standing like weary soldiers guarding memory. Marcus Reed moved slowly, lantern swinging in his hand, boots crunching on gravel. His job was simple: keep the dead in peace. Yet even here, hatred found him. "Hey, grave boy," the voice cut through the night. Marcus looked up. A group of young men leaned against the gate, cigarettes glowing, grins sharp as knives. Another voice followed. "What kind of man cleans up dead folks? Ain't you tired of being at the bottom?" Marcus didn't answer. He set his lantern down, straightened a fallen wreath. Silence was his shield. The leader, Ricky Vaughn, spat into the dirt.
You hear me, boy?
"I'm talking to you." Marcus turned finally, voice calm, deep. "I heard." "Then answer," Ricky pressed, stepping closer. "Why you out here every night moping around graves? Some kind of punishment job?" Marcus's hands brushed dirt from a stone. "Somebody's got to respect the dead." Laughter erupted from the group. "Respect? Man, look at you. Whole town walks over you. Nobody respects you." Marcus didn't flinch. "Respect starts here." The gang circled closer. One leaned in, whispering loud enough for all to hear. "Bet he used to pick cotton out here. That's all he's good for." The words hit heavy, but Marcus kept his stillness. "You think you better than us?" Ricky sneered. "Keeping your head down like you don't hear." "I see you, boy." Trying to act calm. "But we run this town. Sheriff runs it through us, and you just the night janitor for corpses." Marcus finally rose, lantern light painting sharp shadows across his face. His eyes, dark and steady, met Ricky's. "Go home. Leave the dead be." The gang shifted uncomfortably at the weight in his tone. For a flicker of a second, Ricky hesitated. Then he forced a laugh. "Hear that, fellas? Old grave guard thinking he's got authority. Man, you ain't nothing." Marcus picked up his lantern. "Then let me be nothing. Away from you." The quiet that followed was heavy. Ricky spat again, signaling retreat. "We'll be back, grave boy. Don't forget whose town this is." Boots shuffled away into the dark, their laughter trailing like poison smoke. Marcus stood alone among the stones. His hand tightened around the lantern handle, knuckles white. The narration pressed in like an echo. Even the dead could not rest, for the living brought hatred to their gates. He breathed deep, forcing the fury back down. The cemetery was silent again, but inside Marcus, storm stirred. The county office smelled of stale coffee and old paper. Marcus Reed sat quietly on the metal chair across from Sheriff Clay Hargrove's cluttered desk. The sheriff leaned back, boots on the table, hat tilted low, chewing tobacco. His smirk never softened. "So let me get this straight," Clay drawled. "You drag yourself in here saying some kids spray-painted a couple rocks in the graveyard?" "They smashed headstones," Marcus corrected, voice even. "Not rocks, graves," Clay chuckled. "Graves, rocks with names. Same difference to me." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes steady. "Families come there to mourn. They deserve peace." The sheriff leaned forward, spitting into a rusted tin can. "Peace? Peace comes when folks know their place. You stirring this up makes it worse. You understand me?" Marcus didn't respond. His silence drew Clay's grin wider. You think I don't see you sitting out there every night like you some kind of martyr? Walking them grounds like you own it? Man, this town don't belong to you. I never said it did. Marcus replied quietly. Clay's voice sharpened. Then don't act like it. The office door creaked as Deputy Miles walked in, dropping a file on the desk. He glanced at Marcus with a smirk before turning back to Clay. Boss Ricky says we're good for Friday. Marcus's brow furrowed. Clay waved a dismissive hand, eyes flicking back to Marcus. You see, Reed, Clay said slowly. Some folks just know how to work with authority. They don't whine about a little graffiti. They contribute. Keep things smooth. Maybe you should learn from that. By contribute, Marcus said, you mean bow down. The room froze. Clay's smirk vanished for a breath, then returned sharper. Careful now. Words like that can get you in trouble. Marcus stood, his large frame casting a shadow across the desk. The only trouble here is men like Ricky thinking graves are playgrounds. Deputy Miles snorted. What you gonna do, Reed? Lecture him to death? You think you scare anybody? Clay raised a hand, silencing Miles, but his eyes stayed locked on Marcus. You talk mighty bold for a man sweeping leaves off tombs. But bold don't mean powerful. You need to remember that. Marcus leaned in just slightly, his voice lowering to a calm edge. Power doesn't always announce itself, Sheriff. Sometimes it just waits, Clay chuckled, but it was forced. He tipped his hat back. Get out of my office. Go back to your ghosts. Leave the living to me. Marcus nodded once and turned for the door. As he stepped out, Clay called after him. Hey, Reed. Marcus paused. You keep poking around and them boys out there might do more than spray paint. You think about that next time you file a complaint. Marcus walked out without answering. The door clicked shut behind him. Outside, the late afternoon sun burned orange against the courthouse steps. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets, watching traffic drift by. Narration pressed in like an echo. Power doesn't need to shout when it owns the badge, the gun, the keys to the jail. Abuse wears a uniform, smiles in public, spits its venom in private. Deputy Miles came out moments later, laughing with another officer. Their voices carried, man, he thinks he's special. Guarding dead folks like he's some kind of priest. Let him have his ghosts. The living'll chew him up soon enough. Marcus walked away, shoulders straight, eyes unreadable. He knew now the sheriff wasn't just ignoring the gang. He was feeding them. That night back at the cemetery, lantern in hand, Marcus moved among the stones. His fingers traced cracked marble, his breath steady. The wind carried voices again. Ricky and two of his boys leaned against the wall, cigarettes glowing. You see the sheriff today? Ricky laughed. Told him about you. He said you should mind your business. That's a free pass for us, man. His friend added, Sheriff says you nothing. That's all we need to know. Marcus kept his back to them, brushing dirt from a gravestone. Ricky shouted louder. You hear me, grave boy? Sheriff's with us. That means you got no one. You stand alone. Marcus finally turned, lantern light cutting through the dark. His voice was steady, unshaken. I've stood alone before. The boys snickered, mocking his calm tone. Oh, listen to him. Thinks he's deep. You don't get it, do you? You can't win here. Whole system's ours. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. Systems fall. Stones last. The words landed like cold steel. Ricky's grin faltered just a little. The narration closed in. They believed the badge and the gang gave them power. They didn't see what stood before them, a man who had walked through fire carrying silence like a shield. Marcus lifted his lantern higher, light flickering across rows of headstones. Go home, he said. The dead deserve quiet. The gang hesitated. Ricky spat into the dirt, forcing bravado. Enjoy your ghosts, Reed. They'll be the only ones mourning you. They slunk off into the dark. Marcus lowered the lantern, whispering to himself, voice barely audible. Not the first threat I've heard. Won't be the last. The graves around him stood silent, but the weight in the air was heavy. Marcus knew now. Sheriff Clay's shadow stretched long, and it would not stop at broken stones. The morning sun revealed scars across the cemetery. Marcus Reed stood still, eyes heavy, as shattered marble lay scattered like bones. Spray paint screamed from the headstones, words too foul to repeat scrawled in red and black. He crouched, fingertips brushing across a broken slab. Johnson family, 1872. He remembered their descendants. Old Mrs. Hattie, who visited every Sunday, whispering hymns. Boots crunched on gravel behind him. Oh, Lord have mercy. came a trembling voice. Mrs. Hattie stood at the gate, shawl wrapped tight around her thin shoulders. Behind her, more elders approached slowly, men and women leaning on canes, clutching Bibles. Mrs. Hattie pressed a hand to her chest. They broke 'em. They broke our stones. Marcus rose to his full height. I found it this morning. Tears welled in her eyes. That's my family there. My granddaddy laid under that stone. They wrote hate on his name. Her voice cracked, and another elder, Mr. Charles, stepped forward. This ain't just vandalism. This is a message. The small crowd murmured agreement, grief mixing with fear. Marcus's voice was calm but low. Yes, it's meant to scare you. Me too. Mrs. Hattie shook her head. Sheriff won't do nothing. He'll just laugh at us. Silence fell. The truth was heavy, known to all. Then what can we do? Another elder asked. We're too old to fight. Too tired. Marcus looked at the ruins of marble. His fists tightened. We endure. We remember. And we don't bow to them. Mr. Charles let out a bitter laugh. Easy to say, son. But we remember what happens when folks stand tall. Crosses burned. Blood spilled. The crowd nodded, eyes haunted with generational memory. Narration pressed in like a whisper of history. Every graveyard held not only bones but stories. Stories of chains, of flight, of silence forced by the whip and the rope. The paint on these stones was fresh, but the hatred was centuries old. Mrs. Hattie stepped closer to Marcus, looking up at him. Why you stay out here, child? Why guard this place when you know they'll come for you? Marcus hesitated. Because someone must. His answer drew more silence than comfort. The gang appeared before noon, swaggering at the edge of the cemetery, laughing loud enough to be heard. Ricky Vaughn tossed a spray can from hand to hand. Well, look at the funeral club. His eyes locked on Marcus. You see my art? Brings life to this dead place. Gasps rose from the elders. Mrs. Hattie clutched her Bible tighter. Marcus stepped forward, blocking Ricky's path. His tone was steady. Leave, you've done enough, Ricky smirked. Enough? Now we just getting started. Sheriff says you complained again. He told us not to worry, said Reed don't know his place. The gang laughed. Mr. Charles muttered under his breath. Lord have mercy. Marcus didn't move, his broad shoulders squared. This ground is sacred. You've crossed a line. Ricky leaned in, voice mocking. Sacred? Ain't nothing sacred in this town, old man. Sheriff decides what's sacred. And he don't care about your little ghost farm. One of the elders shouted, surprising everyone. Show some respect. Ricky turned to him, grinning. Or what, Grandpa? You gonna beat me with your cane? The gang howled with laughter. Marcus's voice cut through the noise, calm but sharp. Respect starts where you stand, and you've already lost it. Ricky's grin faltered just for a second. You talk big for a grave janitor. Marcus didn't flinch. And you hide small for a coward. The gang shifted uneasily. The elders whispered among themselves, surprised at Marcus's boldness. Ricky spat on the ground, eyes narrowing. Careful, Reed. You keep talking like that, we might have to shut you up for good. Marcus stepped closer, so close Ricky could see the stillness in his eyes. I've heard worse. From men better than you. The tension hung heavy. The gang laughed again, but it was thinner this time, forced. Ricky finally waved his hand. Come on, boys. Let the gravekeeper play preacher. We'll be back tonight. They sauntered off, their laughter echoing like knives against stone. The elders crowded Marcus. They'll come back, one whispered. They'll hurt you, another warned. Marcus stood tall, looking over the ruined stones. Then I'll still be here. Mrs. Hattie's frail hand touched his arm. Why do you risk it, son? You could leave. You could go anywhere. Marcus's eyes softened, but his voice was steady. Because if I leave, who stands for the ones who can't? The dead can't defend themselves. Someone has to. Tears streaked down her cheeks. You're too much like your daddy. Always fighting battles he couldn't win. Marcus lowered his gaze. Maybe I fight so his battles mean something. The crowd fell silent. The broken stones glistened in the sun, and the elders bowed their heads. Narration pressed in heavy with memory. Hatred had smashed marble, but it had not broken spirit. Even in their fear, they gathered. Even in their silence, they listened. Resistance begins in the smallest spark, in one man refusing to bow, in one elder daring to whisper defiance. Marcus picked up a broom and began sweeping fragments into a pile. His voice carried low, steady, for the elders and the dead alike. They want us afraid. We answer with respect. They want us silent. We answer with memory. The broom rasped against stone, each stroke a quiet vow. Later that night, Marcus stood alone again. The graves lay in ruin, but lantern light washed them in warmth. He whispered under his breath, "They can't erase you. Not while I'm here." Wind rustled through the trees, carrying a faint sound as though the stones themselves murmured back. The sheriff's office glowed dim under a single desk lamp. Clay Hargrove leaned back in his chair, whiskey glass in hand, boots crossed on the desk. Smoke from his cigar curled thick in the stale air. Across from him, Ricky Vaughn lounged with his crew, hats tilted, trying to look relaxed. But the way their knees bounced betrayed nerves. Clay chuckled low. "You boys really stirred up the grave guard this time. Broke them stones clean in half," Ricky smirked. "Ain't nothing he can do. Man's just a lonely fool watching corpses." Clay pointed his cigar at Ricky. "Don't underestimate folks who stay quiet. Quiet men. They listen. They see more than you think." One of Ricky's boys, Darnell, frowned. "You worried about him?" Clay laughed, shaking his head. "Worried? Nah, but I like to keep my ducks in a row. Man files complaints, makes noise. Folks upstate might start sniffing. Can't have that." Ricky leaned forward. "So what you want us to do? Scare him harder? Make him disappear?" Clay sipped his whiskey, eyes narrowing. "Not yet. You keep him busy. Break his spirit. Push him till he either leaves or begs me for help. Then I own him." Darnell grinned. "What if he don't break?" Clay's jaw tightened. He spat tobacco into a tin can. "Everybody breaks. Especially his kind. Push long enough, they fold." The crew laughed. But Ricky's eyes flickered with unease. Outside, hidden in the shadows near the cracked blinds, Marcus Reed stood motionless. He had followed Ricky quietly, boots silent on the courthouse gravel. Now he listened, every word burning into memory. Narration pressed in like a drumbeat. The sheriff's badge was not a shield. It was a weapon, handed to a man who wore racism like a second skin. His alliance with the gang wasn't rumor anymore. It was truth. And truth was dangerous. Inside, Ricky finally spoke again, his tone sharp. "What if he fights back? Some of the boys say there's something off about him, like he ain't scared the way he should be." Clay snorted. "Man guards tombstones for a living. That's all you need to know. You boys got numbers. He's alone. End of story." "But," Ricky began. Clay cut him off, voice cold. "You listen to me. Sheriff's word keeps you out of jail. Sheriff's word keeps your pockets full. Sheriff says Reed is nothing, so Reed is nothing. You get me?" Ricky swallowed, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, we get you." Clay leaned back, satisfied. "Good. Now go play tough somewhere else. And remember, and if Reed ever tries to cry wolf again, I'll make sure the only ears hearing him are the ones in the graveyard he loves so much." The boys laughed, masks of bravado barely hiding their relief. Marcus backed away from the window, breath slow but steady. His eyes burned under the moonlight, so it was true. The sheriff fed the wolves, then pretended to hold the leash. He walked quietly into the cemetery that night, lantern swinging at his side. His steps were heavy, but his face calm. Mrs. Hattie had told him once that the dead whispered to those who kept vigil. Tonight, Marcus felt it. The silence was louder than words. Later, at a diner on the edge of town, Ricky and his boys sat in a booth, greasy plates before them. "You think Reed knows?" Darnell asked between mouthfuls of fries. Ricky shook his head. "Man don't know nothing. He just stands there like a scarecrow. But still, I don't like the way he looks at me. Like he sees straight through." Another boy snickered. "Scarecrow? More like dead man walking." Ricky forced a laugh, but his eyes stayed hard. "Dead men don't stare back like that." Narration tightened, dark and sharp. Every corrupt deal leaves a trail. Every laugh hides a tremor. The sheriff believed silence meant weakness. But silence also meant patience. And patience, sharpened by injustice, could cut deeper than any blade. Marcus sat alone among the graves, his lantern glowing like a watchtower flame. The sheriff thought him broken. The gang thought him weak, but Marcus Reed was listening. And he was waiting. The cemetery was quieter than usual, the moon veiled by clouds. Marcus Reed walked his route slowly, lantern bobbing. A hush pressed down heavier than the night air. From the shadows, whispers crawled. "There he is. Wait till he gets closer." Marcus paused. His instincts prickled. He set the lantern down, eyes sweeping the tree line. Nothing moved. Only the silence. Then, footsteps. Quick, surrounding. 5 figures emerged, Ricky at the front, a baseball bat resting on his shoulder. Well, the night guard himself. Ricky's grin gleamed cruel. Told you we'd be back. Marcus stood still. This ground is not yours, Ricky laughed. Ground? You still talking like a preacher? Nah, Reed, tonight's about lessons. You don't know your place. We'll teach you. Darnell cracked his knuckles. Ain't no sheriff to run to now. Marcus didn't move. Leave, you don't want this. The gang roared with laughter. Ricky stepped closer, swinging the bat lazily. You hear that? Old grave boy thinks he's scary. Another voice jeered. What you gonna do? Haunt us. Marcus's silence unnerved them more than his words. He stood like a wall, broad shoulders lit faintly by the lantern glow. Ricky suddenly swung. The bat slammed against Marcus's ribs. Pain shot through him, but he stayed on his feet, see? Ricky laughed. He ain't nothing. Just a bag of bones. The others closed in, fists and boots raining blows. Marcus staggered, grunted, but refused to fall. You fighting back or what? Darnell sneered, shoving him. Come on, tough guy. Marcus coughed, blood on his lip, but his voice stayed calm. I'm not here to fight. Ricky slammed the bat across his back. Marcus dropped to one knee. Not here to fight? Ricky spat. Then you here to beg? The others laughed, circling like vultures. One leaned down. Say it. Say you nothing. Marcus looked up slowly, eyes dark and steady. His voice was low, dangerous. You don't know what nothing is. For a flicker of a moment, the gang froze. Something in his tone, in the depth of his stare, cut colder than the night air. Ricky covered the chill with rage. He kicked Marcus hard in the chest. Stay down, grave boy. Marcus hit the ground, gravel biting into his palms. The gang whooped, cheering. Yeah, that's it. That's your place. Crawl in with the dead. Marcus coughed again, chest burning. Memories rose unbidden. Desert nights in foreign lands, gunfire cracking, blood in the sand. Faces of men, he commanded, men who died following his orders. He had buried too many to count. Narration pressed in. Once Marcus Reed commanded soldiers. Once he moved through war zones like a shadow, death at his shoulder. But he had laid that life down, seeking silence among the dead. He chose peace, yet peace would not choose him. Ricky bent low, sneering inches from Marcus's face. You remember this next time you try to play hero. Sheriff don't care. We own this town, and you? You just a broken man in a graveyard. He spat on Marcus, then stood. Come on, boys. Let him rot with his ghosts. The gang drifted off, their laughter echoing like jackals. Marcus lay still for a long while, breath shallow, ribs aching. The lantern flickered nearby, its light trembling. Slowly, he pushed himself up, every muscle screaming. He staggered to a headstone, leaning against it for support. His hand brushed over the carved name. Forgive me, he whispered, though he wasn't sure to whom. The dead, his fallen brothers, or himself. His mind replayed Ricky's words. Broken man. He closed his eyes. Images of Delta Force missions burned behind them. The ambush in Kandahar, the night op in Fallujah, the betrayal that ended his career. He had led men through hell but could not protect them all. He had left that life. He had chosen silence. Yet silence now brought only pain. Narration flowed like a drumbeat. They mistook restraint for weakness. They mistook peace for surrender. But every blow awakened a ghost. And Marcus carried an army of ghosts inside him. By dawn, Marcus was bandaged, standing again. The townsfolk who visited that morning gasped at his bruises. Mrs. Hattie pressed a hand to her mouth. Lord have mercy, child. What did they do to you? Marcus shook his head. It's nothing, Mr. Charles snapped. Don't you say that? They'll kill you if you let 'em keep on. They already tried, Marcus murmured. The crowd fell silent at his calm tone. Mrs. Hattie gripped his hand. You can't face this alone. Marcus's gaze swept the broken stones, the fading graffiti, the graves he swore to protect. His voice came steady, resolute. I've stood alone before. That night, alone once more with his lantern, Marcus whispered into the silence. You wanted peace. You wanted quiet. But maybe peace ain't bought with silence. The lantern flame flared against the dark, throwing his shadow long across the graves. Marcus Reed's silence was breaking. The cemetery was restless that evening. Lanterns flickered as families came to lay flowers, whispering prayers into the dusk. A young woman, her face streaked with tears, knelt at her father's grave. Her 2 children clung to her dress. Confused by grief, Marcus stood a short distance away, hands clasped behind his back, keeping watch. Then the jeering came. "Look at this," Ricky Vaughn's voice rang out, swaggering through the gate with 4 boys at his side. Spray cans clattered in their hands. Family reunion at the graveyard. The young woman stiffened, clutching her children tighter. One child began to cry. "Don't," Marcus said, his voice cutting across the air. Ricky smirked. "Don't what?" "They can cry. Ain't illegal." Marcus stepped forward, broad frame casting a long shadow. His eyes locked on Ricky. "Don't take one more step." The gang slowed, thrown by the sharpness in his tone. Darnell laughed nervously. "What, you gonna hit us with your broom?" Marcus didn't move. His voice came like steel. "Leave now." Ricky tilted his head, forcing bravado. "Or what? You can't touch us. Sheriff's got our back." Marcus's eyes didn't waver. "I don't care whose back you think you got. You cross this line, I promise you won't walk away the same." The air shifted. Even the crying child fell silent. One of Ricky's boys whispered, "Man, why he sound like that?" Marcus stepped closer. His stance changed. Shoulders squared, weight balanced, eyes locked like a marksman. The calm mask slipped, revealing command. "You think I'm just a guard," Marcus said low. "But I've commanded men tougher than you, in places darker than you'll ever see. Men who never came home, men who gave everything, and I carry them here." He tapped his chest. The gang froze. The young woman whispered to her children, "Stay behind me." Ricky forced a laugh, but it cracked. "What's this? War stories? You expect us to be scared 'cause you played soldier?" Marcus stepped in close, so close Ricky felt the heat of his breath. His voice dropped, quiet as thunder. "Delta Force, Commander. I've buried men on 3 continents. I've taken down enemies who didn't even fear death. And you," his eyes pierced Ricky's, "you're just a boy with a can of paint." Silence slammed over the cemetery. The gang shifted uneasily, glancing at each other. One muttered, "Delta? He for real?" Marcus didn't break eye contact. "Leave this family alone. Leave these graves alone, or I'll show you what it means to face a man who doesn't need a gun to end you." The weight of his words landed heavy. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ricky's bravado flickered, but pride forced him forward. He shoved Marcus's chest. "You think you scare me?" Marcus didn't move. His voice came flat, cold. "You're already scared. I can see it in your eyes." Darnell grabbed Ricky's arm. "Man, let's go." This ain't worth it," but Ricky jerked free. "Shut up. He's bluffing." Marcus leaned in, whispering so only Ricky heard. "I don't bluff. I calculate." Something in Ricky's face faltered. He stepped back without meaning to. The young woman gathered her children, whispering thanks with trembling lips. The family hurried away. Ricky's crew looked at him, waiting for a signal. Ricky's hand trembled around his spray can. Finally he snapped, "Fine, we'll be back when you ain't got no audience." They stormed out, laughter forced, masks cracking. Marcus stood alone again, the graves quiet around him. His chest rose and fell, not from fear but from restraint. He had revealed more than he meant to. Narration pressed in. The ghosts he carried no longer stayed hidden. They rose when called, shadows of a commander who once led men into fire. The mask of silence had slipped. Now both the gang and the sheriff would know. Marcus Reed was not just a guard. That night Ricky stormed into Sheriff Clay's office, rage trembling under his skin. "You didn't tell me he was military." Clay looked up from his whiskey glass, smirk curling. "So? A lot of boys been in the service." Ricky slammed his fist on the desk. "Not like him. He's different. The way he looked at me, man, I swear he's killed people." Clay leaned back, chewing tobacco slowly. "Good. Maybe you'll finally learn not to be scared of your own shadow. You're supposed to be running this town, and you're telling me you're scared of one man with a lantern." Ricky's jaw clenched. "He ain't just one man. He's trained." Clay's smile hardened. "Then finish it." "Sheriff's orders." Ricky blinked. "You serious?" Clay slammed his glass down. "Dead serious. You deal with him, or I deal with you." The room fell silent. Ricky swallowed hard, then nodded. "All right. We'll handle it." Outside, rain began to fall. Marcus stood at the gate of the cemetery, soaked but unflinching. His hand rested on the cold iron, eyes staring into the storm. Narration carried like a drumbeat. He had left war behind, choosing silence among the dead. But war had found him again. And this time the battlefield was his own ground, the enemies his own neighbors. Marcus whispered to himself, barely audible over the rain. If it's a fight they want, I'll give 'em one they'll never forget. The lantern flame burned defiantly against the storm, a lone sentinel in the dark. The cemetery gates creaked shut with a groan. Marcus locked them as usual, lantern swaying in his hand. The rain from earlier had left the ground damp, the air sharp with the smell of wet earth. But tonight it was too quiet. His instincts screamed. From behind the crypts, shadows stirred. Ricky's voice sliced the silence. "Welcome to your last shift, Reed." Marcus turned slowly. Ricky and his boys stepped into view, baseball bats and chains in hand. Their faces burned with rage and fear. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Still not man enough to face me alone," Darnell sneered. "You talk too much." Marcus lifted the lantern, its glow spilling across their faces. "You think numbers will save you? You think the sheriff will cover your sins forever?" Ricky snarled. "This ain't about the sheriff. This is personal." Marcus set the lantern down on a stone. His voice dropped, steady, controlled. "Then come. But understand, once you cross this line, there's no going back." The gang hesitated. Something in the weight of his words clawed at their bravado. Ricky roared, charging first. "Take him!" The fight erupted. The first swing came wild. Marcus sidestepped, grabbing Ricky's wrist, twisting until the bat clattered to the ground. He shoved him hard into a headstone. Another came from behind, chain whipping. Marcus ducked, drove his elbow back into the boy's ribs. The breath whooshed out of him. Darnell swung low. Marcus caught the bat mid-arc, yanked it free, and flung it aside. His eyes flashed, calm, deadly. "You boys never learned discipline," he muttered. Sweat and fear stung the gang's eyes. They circled, panting, their bravado breaking. Ricky spat blood, scrambling up. "What are you waiting for?" "Get him!" They lunged all at once. Marcus moved like water, every strike precise, controlled. A boot swept one boy's legs out. A fist slammed another's jaw. Years of training surged through him, unstoppable. Narration cut sharp. For years he buried this man inside, the commander, the ghost who moved through fire. But tonight the ghost walked again. One boy cried out, clutching his arm. Another stumbled back, nose broken. The lantern's glow turned the brawl into a battlefield. Breathless, Darnell yelled, "He ain't human." Marcus's eyes locked on him. "No, I'm a man who's seen too much death to let children like you add more to it." Ricky, shaking with fury, grabbed a knife from his pocket. "Then die with your ghosts." He lunged. Marcus sidestepped, catching Ricky's wrist. With a brutal twist, the knife clattered to the ground. Marcus shoved him face first into the dirt, knee pressing his back. The cemetery rang with Ricky's muffled screams. "Listen," Marcus growled. "This ends now. No more graves desecrated. No more families terrorized. You want to prove your men? Then live better than this." Ricky writhed, rage boiling. "You don't own us," Marcus's voice thundered. "I own nothing. But this ground belongs to the dead, and I will not let you shame them again." He released Ricky, letting him collapse, coughing in the mud. The others staggered, clutching bruises and cuts. Their eyes no longer held laughter, only fear. Marcus picked up the lantern, flame steady. He looked at them all, voice cold as stone. "Leave. If you return, I won't hold back." The silence weighed heavy. One by one, the boys backed away, dragging Ricky with them. Their pride shattered, their power broken. But in the distance, headlights flared. A police cruiser rolled up to the gates. Sheriff Clay stepped out, hat low, smirk wide. "Well, well, what we got here?" His drawl dripped venom. Ricky stumbled forward, shouting, "He jumped us!" "Crazy bastard attacked us." Clay's eyes slid to Marcus, then to the bruised boys. "That true, Reed? You assaulting minors on my watch?" Marcus's grip tightened on the lantern handle. His ribs still ached, but his voice came firm. "They came for me again, you know it." Clay spit tobacco on the ground. "All I know is I got witnesses saying you went wild. That makes you a danger, Reed." The gang grinned weakly, hiding behind the sheriff's shadow. Clay stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I warned you, boy. Should have kept quiet. Now you're done." Marcus held his stare. "No, Sheriff. You're the one who's done. Your town's watching. Every bruise on my body, every grave defiled, it all points back to you and yours." Clay's smirk faltered. Marcus's voice cut like a blade. "You hid behind children. I led men into hell. And I survived. You think you can break me with lies? The sheriff's jaw twitched. He turned to Ricky. Get out of here. All of you. I'll deal with him. The gang scurried off, limping, muttering curses under their breath. Marcus stood firm, lantern glowing against the sheriff's looming shadow. Narration tightened. The trap was sprung, but not on him. Tonight Marcus Reed had revealed the ghost he carried, and the sheriff had seen it too. Fear shifted. The hunted was no longer prey. The hunter had awakened. Clay leaned close, voice low. Careful, Reed, ghosts don't scare me. Marcus's gaze burned steady. Then maybe it's time you met them. The sheriff's smirk flickered just for a second. The rain began again, pattering softly against the graves. Marcus turned, lantern high, leaving the sheriff standing alone at the gates, watching a man he could no longer control. The cemetery lay hushed under a crescent moon. Marcus leaned on the old wrought iron gate, ribs still sore from the brawl. He'd patched himself up, but the ache ran deeper than bruises. The dead gave no answers, only silence. Then the rumble of engines shattered the calm. Headlights cut through the night. 2 cruisers followed by a pickup. Doors slammed, boots thudded. Sheriff Clay stepped forward, flanked by deputies. Ricky and his boys lurked behind, smirking, bandaged but vengeful. Marcus straightened, lantern glowing steady in his hand. Clay's voice carried, loud, mocking. Evenin', Reed. You and me got unfinished business. Marcus didn't move. This isn't your ground, Sheriff, Clay laughed. This whole town's mine. Don't you get that yet? The deputies spread out, hands resting on batons and pistols. Ricky whispered something and one deputy chuckled darkly. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You brought children again. Clay's smirk sharpened. Children? They say you nearly killed them last night. You a danger, Reed. Dangerous man with a violent past. Ain't that right, boys? Ricky stepped forward, voice loud. He snapped. Beat us bloody for nothing. Marcus spoke calm, steady. You came armed. You came to desecrate graves. You attacked first, the deputies chuckled. One spat. Funny how his story always sounds noble. Clay raised a hand, silencing them. He fixed his eyes on Marcus. I don't care what happened. What matters is what I say happened. And I say you're guilty. The weight of his words pressed heavy. Marcus's voice stayed level. You abuse the badge. You protect criminals and call it law. Clay's smirk faltered just a breath. Careful, Reed. Folks who talk like that disappear. Ricky laughed too loud, trying to mask his nerves. Yeah, maybe we should bury him right here. Let him keep the dead company. One deputy tapped his baton against his palm. Wouldn't take much to make it look like he came at us first. Marcus's silence cut sharper than words. He stared at them all, lantern flame steady, breath calm. Finally, he spoke. You think I fear death, but I've walked through death, lived in it. You only play with the idea. That's why you'll never win. The deputies shifted uneasily. Even Ricky looked away. Clay's jaw tightened. He barked, arrest him. The deputies moved in. Marcus set the lantern down gently, rolling his shoulders. His voice came low, dangerous. Last chance. Walk away. They rushed. The first swung a baton. Marcus ducked, twisted his arm, and sent the weapon clattering. He shoved him into another, toppling them both. Another deputy charged, hand on his gun. Marcus slapped the pistol aside, drove a knee into his gut. The man crumpled, gasping. Ricky grabbed a chain, yelling, Now! Get him! Marcus turned, fist snapping across Ricky's jaw. Ricky stumbled back, spitting blood, eyes wide with fear. The lantern's glow caught Marcus's face. Calm, focused, unshaken. Narration struck hard. Every strike carried not rage, but control. He did not fight to kill. He fought to remind them he was not prey. 2 deputies staggered up, faces bruised. He's a monster, one shouted. Clay's eyes burned. He yanked his revolver free, leveling it at Marcus. Enough! The cemetery froze. The deputies stopped. Ricky froze mid-step. Clay's voice dripped venom. I should have done this the first night. Put you down like the dog you are. Marcus stood tall, staring down the barrel. His voice came soft, steady. Then do it. Show them all what kind of man you are. The silence grew suffocating. The deputies shifted nervously, whispers flickering. Ricky's lip trembled. Clay's finger twitched on the trigger. Sweat beaded on his brow. Marcus's eyes never blinked. Pull it, Sheriff. Add one more ghost to my shoulders. The weight of his calm crushed the night. Clay's breath grew ragged. Finally, he snarled, lowering the gun. This ain't over. He spit on the ground, turned to his deputies. Get these boys out of here. We'll finish it my way. They retreated, muttering curses. Ricky shot Marcus a look of pure hate but said nothing, limping after them. Soon only Marcus remained, lantern flickering against the graves. He picked it up, whispering into the silence. They wanted my silence. They wanted fear. But all they gave me was fire. His reflection trembled in the lantern glass. He saw not just his face, but the shadows of men he'd lost, brothers in arms, eyes watching. Narration pressed in like a drumbeat. Every blow, every bruise, every threat had forged something unbreakable. The sheriff thought silence meant surrender. He had no idea silence was sharpening the blade. Marcus raised the lantern higher, flame steady, unwavering. To the end, he whispered. The cemetery held its breath. The sky bled gray as dawn crawled over the cemetery. Mist clung to the gravestones, each one standing like a silent witness. Marcus Reed walked his patrol slowly, lantern dim in the new light. His body ached, but his stride carried iron. Today felt final. A pickup rattled up the dirt road. Ricky jumped out first, lips still swollen, eyes burning with fury. Behind him came the rest of the crew, bandaged but seething. Sheriff Clay stepped out last, boots crunching gravel, revolver heavy on his hip. Clay's smirk cut sharp. Morning, Reed. Figured you'd still be breathing. Shame. Marcus didn't stop walking. You've had your chances, Sheriff. Clay barked a laugh. You still don't get it. Ain't about chances. Ain't about law. It's about power. And I'm the law in this town. Ricky spat in the dirt. You dead, grave boy. From the mist, voices stirred. Hold it right there. Heads snapped around. Mrs. Hattie, cane in hand, stood at the gate. Behind her gathered townsfolk. Mr. Charles, the grieving young mother, and dozens more. Faces hard, eyes tired, they marched forward. One man carried a camera. Another, a phone raised high, red light blinking. Clay stiffened. What the hell is this? Mrs. Hattie's voice shook but carried strong. This is the truth. We seen your boys run wild. We seen you turn your back. And we seen Reed bleed. The crowd murmured in agreement. Clay sneered. You think anyone cares? You think a crowd of nobodies gonna stop me? Marcus finally halted, turning to face them all. His voice came low, powerful. This ends here, Ricky shouted. He's lying. He's dangerous. He attacked us? The young mother stepped forward, trembling but fierce. I saw you. You came after him while he protected my children. Gasps rippled. Ricky's bravado faltered. She's lying. The man with the camera spoke up. Funny, we got footage too. He held up his phone. The crowd parted so the lens caught Ricky's bruised gang wielding bats and chains. The sheriff standing silent in the background. Proof. Clay's face drained. Marcus's voice cut through the tension. For weeks you let them desecrate graves, terrorize families. You called it law. But the truth is clear now. He stepped forward, lantern raised, though the sun now glowed. This flame don't go out. Not for gangs. Not for sheriffs. Not for fear. The crowd erupted, voices rising. You can't silence us. No more. Justice for our dead. The sheriff's hand twitched toward his revolver. But every lens, every eye locked on him. His power crumbled under the weight of witnesses. Clay snarled, eyes darting. Put those damn phones down. Marcus's voice boomed. Go on, Sheriff. Show them who you really are. Pull it. Prove me right. The deputies shifted uneasily. One finally muttered, Sheriff. It's over. Clay froze. The crowd pressed closer. Ricky stumbled back, voice cracking. Sheriff, say something. Do something. But Clay's smirk was gone. His face sagged, sweat dripping. He looked smaller than ever, a man unmasked. Narration whispered like judgment. For years he hid behind the badge, behind fear, behind silence. But fear burns away in the light, and silence breaks when truth speaks. Marcus stepped closer to Ricky, lantern glowing between them. You wanted a war, boy. But war don't end with bravado. It ends with graves. You lucky I chose mercy. Ricky's mouth trembled. His eyes darted to the crowd, then to Clay, then to the ground. Marcus turned to the sheriff. You thought this town was yours, but it belongs to its people. And today they take it back, the crowd roared. Phones held higher, voices chanting, justice, justice, justice. Clay stumbled, surrounded, drowning in the sound. Suddenly, Ricky snapped. He grabbed the sheriff's revolver from his holster and swung it toward Marcus. The crowd screamed, but Marcus moved faster. one hand clamping Ricky's wrist, twisting until the gun dropped. He shoved Ricky back hard, sending him sprawling in the dirt. The weapon landed at Clay's boots. For a breath, silence hung. Clay bent, picked it up. The crowd gasped, waiting for him to turn it on Marcus. Instead, he turned it on Ricky. "You stupid little brat," Clay hissed. "You ruined everything." Ricky froze, eyes wide. "Or wait." But before he could finish, deputies rushed forward, tackling Clay, ripping the gun from his hand. "You lost it, Sheriff," one shouted. "It's over." The crowd erupted in chaos. Ricky sobbed, scrambling away. Clay roared, spitting curses, thrashing in their grip. "You think this ends me? You think you people matter?" He bellowed, but the chants drowned him out. "Justice! Justice, justice!" Marcus stood still, lantern glowing. He watched the sheriff dragged off, Ricky shaking, the deputies turning their badges in shame. Narration pressed in. Poetic justice never comes clean. It comes raw, loud, messy, but it comes all the same. The sheriff who hid behind power was exposed by his own hand. The gang that mocked graves now lay broken before the living. Silence had spoken, and the town had listened. Mrs. Hattie limped forward, tears streaking her cheeks. She clasped Marcus's hand. "You saved us, child. Saved more than the graves. You saved the living." Marcus's eyes softened. "I only did what was right," Mr. Charles shouted from the crowd, voice fierce. "You ain't just a guard. You are protector." The crowd cheered, voices swelling. Marcus lowered his head, whispering to himself, "I was a soldier once, but maybe this was the only war that mattered." The mist thinned, sunlight breaking over the cemetery. The lantern flame flickered, then steadied, glowing bright even in the dawn. The sun rose soft and gold, spilling over the cemetery. Dew glistened on the grass, graves bathed in light. For the first time in weeks, there was peace. Marcus Reed walked his route slowly, lantern in hand, though the day needed no flame. His body still ached, but his steps carried calm. At the gate, townsfolk gathered. Mrs. Hattie, Mr. Charles, the young mother with her children. They watched him, quiet respect in their eyes. Mrs. Hattie broke the silence. "Sheriff Clay's gone. State men took him away this morning. Ricky, too, he'll face his day in court." Marcus nodded once. "The dead can rest easier now," Mr. Charles snorted. "And the livin' can breathe without fear." He stepped closer, eyes firm. "You ain't just a guard anymore, Marcus. You family, and this town owes you." Marcus looked away, voice low. "I didn't fight for thanks." Mrs. Hattie touched his arm, her hand trembling but warm. "We know. That's why it matters." The children tugged at their mother's dress, staring at Marcus. One whispered, "Mama, is he a hero?" The mother smiled softly. "Yes, baby." The kind that carries light even in the dark. Marcus's throat tightened. He crouched, lantern flickering in his hand. "Heroes don't hide in graveyards," he said gently. The child shook their head. "But you didn't hide. You stayed." Marcus's eyes softened. "Maybe that's enough." The crowd slowly drifted away, leaving Marcus alone again with the stones. He walked among them, stopping at a weathered grave with no flowers. Kneeling, he set the lantern down, flame steady. His hand brushed the carved name. "Brothers," he whispered, voice breaking. "I couldn't save you all, but maybe I can guard what remains." Narration pressed in. He had carried war inside him, ghosts on his shoulders. For years he mistook silence for surrender, but silence had not been weakness, it had been waiting. Waiting for the moment to rise, to remind the world that dignity can be defended, even by one man in the dark. That night, Marcus walked the cemetery once more. Lantern high, he passed between the rows of stone. Fireflies drifted like tiny sparks around him. From a distance, the town watched, some from porches, some from windows. They saw not just a guard, but a sentinel. Mr. Charles's voice murmured to his neighbor, "Ain't no gang or sheriff gonna break him. He's made of iron and ghosts." The neighbor nodded. "Not ghosts, light." Near midnight, Marcus stopped at the center of the cemetery. He raised the lantern, flame glowing against the vast dark sky. His voice carried low, steady, to the fallen, to the forgotten, to the living who still fight. The light stands. The lantern flame burned steady, unyielding. Narration closed like scripture. The sheriff's badge rusted. The gang's power crumbled. But the lantern still burned. Because justice is not in uniforms or titles. Justice is in those who refuse to bow. And Marcus Reed, the silent guard, stood eternal among the dead, aflame in the dark. At the gate, Mrs. Hattie whispered into the night, though Marcus could not hear. Let him write it down one day. The man who carried the lantern never let it die. The camera of the mind pulled back, graves stretching endless, mist rolling soft, and at the center, one man with a lantern, his shadow tall against eternity. The light did not falter, the light did not die.